when we're talking about ships, they're obviously very expensive beasts, but so are planes.
Yep.
And there's always, I guess, in any military, there's always a degree of rivalry between the different services, as well as common interests. Are you able to say anything about what Australia needs for its Air Force and its Army? Are the challenges facing them as great and potentially as expensive as those facing the Navy to meet the needs of Australia's defence?
The rivalry you talk about, the competition for funds is real. There's no doubt about that. And that's probably one of the significant challenges that government ministers will confront as the Defence Minister is making decisions around how to apportion the funding,
Mm-hmm.
which is complicated significantly in the event that the funding is sort of less than it should be to keep each of the services at a level which is appropriate to our needs, which I would say it is. So just looking at the three services now, I think, as I've been quoted as saying, the Navy is in serious, accelerating and chronic decline. And that's an inescapable fact today.
Mm.
The Air Force, on the other hand, is in quite a different situation. It's got one of the youngest fleet of aircraft in the world. Modern aircraft, very capable aircraft, mostly out of the US, but some systems from elsewhere too, in a very significant array of individual capabilities, all of which support the air defence, air combat roles in Australia, or they support to some extent or other the Air Force and the other two services. So the transport aircraft, for example, and we need a significant transport fleet of aircraft simply because of our size, and we need a variety of different types of aircraft. And we do have that now as well. So I think the Air Force is perhaps better placed in terms of capability. Is it the right size for what we actually need? And there are areas that I would suggest are seriously underdone. The maritime surveillance aircraft, for example, I think we have far too few of those for our needs to do maritime patrol and surveillance around Australia. The new Triton unmanned aerial vehicles, we're buying four. So where can you keep one of those all the time? Well, you can only keep them in one spot pretty much all the time with four aircraft. And I would say probably some of the other supporting aircraft are in too smaller numbers. And we have the same three fighter squadrons that we've had since Korea. And it's worth noting that we sent one fighter squadron to the Korean War, 77 Squadron, and they were there pretty much right through. But that one squadron drained all of the other squadrons of aircraft and people. To sustain that one squadron on operations during the Korean War, continually cycling people through, changing aircraft out, it just drained everything else out of the country. So when you have only three of one thing, like three guided missile destroyers, you can only really expect to be using one with any reliability over a lengthy period of time. And if you want to have them on station, then you probably need four. So we've got two tankers. That's not good. We probably don't have as many tanker aircraft as we might need to have. It all depends on the rate of effort, how far from home, what's the nature of the conflict. Are you in a serious fighting war? Are you going to take casualties? Are you going to lose aircraft? That's the same for all three services. In respect of the Army, I think there are two significant issues with the Army that have had a very serious negative impact on the Army. One is that the Army has always existed, generally speaking, and certainly in modern times, on the basis that we're most likely to plug it in to someone else's fight. That's what we've historically done, going right back. And right at the beginning of the Federation, the Army was not a standing army, it was a militia.
Yeah.
Now, it's a standing army these days, but it's a very small one. It's
Yes.
got a huge range of very important niche capabilities. It's a very complex beast, and it needs to be, even to be able to deploy a single infantry battle group with the various types of support that it needs, logistics and armour, to fight any sort of modern battle in almost any theatre of war. Is that what we really want to do? Is one combined arms brigade of the Australian Army able to be deployed somewhere? Is that what we want? Or are there other jobs that we want the Army to be able to do? And therefore, how will we equip them to do that? How many people should it be? And what's that going to cost? So The answer to any of these questions, what should we do, is how long is a piece of string to some extent. But what I do think needs to be applied is a rationale and a logical sequence of thinking to bring us to an answer. And at the end, the answer will always be a compromise for a country like Australia, simply because we, as I mentioned before, in my view, we are unlikely to be willing as a nation to spend the amount of money it takes to be completely self-reliant.
Right.
We need to be spending enough money to be able to be as reliant as we really need to be to meet the most pressing risks that we think we might face.